Hello and welcome to Drishti IAS. My name is 𝐠𝐢𝐲 𝐏𝐫𝐞𝐥𝐢𝐬 and in this video we will discuss the highlights of conducting census 2027. So for long there were discussions of conducting a new census because the last one was conducted in 2011 and the data was very outdated. New one was supposed to be conducted in 2021 but that could not be conducted due to COVID-19 situation. So post that there have been several discussions for having a new census, and finally on 16th of June 2025 the Registrar General of India has issued a gazette that the new census will be conducted in 2027. And this exercise is going to be completed in two phases. So the first phase will be about house listing, where we will capture house data or household data, and this will be conducted from April to September 2026. And the second phase will be about population enumeration, that will start in February 2027 and it will be concluded by March 1, 2027 for most of the Indian states, the only exception being snow-covered regions like Ladakh, Jammu Kashmir, Himachal and Uttarakhand, where this exercise will be conducted by 1st October 2026. And one of the possible reasons could be that from November to March there are peak winters in these areas and it is going to be logistically very challenging. Population mobility is going to be an issue. Maybe that is also a reason that this exercise will be conducted first in the snow-covered regions by 1st October 2027 and post that it will be completed by 1st March 2027 for most of the India. Now this census, conducting this census becomes very critical also for implementing the Women's Reservation Bill. Women's Reservation Bill, if you recall, there was a bill that came in which talked about giving 33% reservation to women in Lok Sabha and in state legislative assemblies. Now the condition here is for implementation of the bill that a new census needs to be conducted and the data will be 2027 census data. So that is also one of the reasons, one of the most important reasons that we need to have a new census in place as soon as possible, because the data that we are relying on is very outdated. It is 2011, decades old data. So this is what will be done in census 2027. We will discuss both these phases in detail in the upcoming slides, but let us first look at the historical background of conducting census. So the first attempt, any attempt to count the population was made in medieval times during the time of Akbar. So it has been mentioned in 𝐈𝐀𝐒 𝐏𝐫𝐞𝐥𝐢𝐬 in the 16th century that a first attempt to population counting was made by Akbar, and then even in the British rule, in some presidencies this attempt was made. In 1822 Madras Presidency and 1824 Bombay Presidency. So there were some attempts that were made historically also since medieval times, but the drawback with all these attempts was that they were very local in nature, unregulated, asynchronized in nature, because there was no unified India at that time. There were only kingdoms and British presidencies. So this was not happening at an all India level. It was very local in nature. So then in 1872, the first synchronous census was initiated in select regions under British India by Lord Mayo. Now for the first time a synchronous census was conducted. What do we understand by synchronous census? It means that the selected regions, the regions that were selected for conducting a census, the census happened in all those regions simultaneously. That is why it was a synchronous census. But it was not a complete census because some selected regions were identified. This did not happen at an all India level. So this was not a complete census, but it was the first synchronous census. Then in 1881 came in the first synchronous, complete and all India census. So this was conducted by W.C. Plowden, and this marks the beginning of our decennial census tradition. So decennial census tradition is conducting census after every 10 years. So this started in 1881 by W.C. Plowden. It was first complete, synchronized at an all India level census information. Then in 1931, we did something interesting. We tried to calculate or count the caste based information in census. So we had SCs and STs. There were no OBCs back then. So SCs and ST data was conducted for the first time or added in our census for the first time in 1931. This was before independence. Post independence, nothing of this sort has happened. Our census even today has information about SCs and STs, but it does not have any information about OBCs. So the first time this happened in 1931, but something else happened after independence, and that was socio-economic caste census, which came in 2011. So the socio-economic caste census also looked at adding caste enumeration or caste listing in the census, but there were a lot of drawbacks with this census. So this census data was never publicly released because the data was very unreliable. There was a lot of duplication of data, there was unreliability in data, inaccuracy in data, and that is the reason that this data was never made public. And when it was never made public, it was never really used to make any welfare policy, so the entire purpose was defeated. But this was a step in the direction of adding caste enumeration in our census. Now, what is going to happen in 2027? Two very interesting things, unique things have been introduced. Number one, this is going to be our fully digital census, first fully digital census. And number two, we are going to have caste enumeration in this data. So let us look at all these things, four of these things one by one. First, fully digital census. So our smartphones will be connected with census apps, and we will be able to enter our information real time, and the government will be able to monitor our information real time. So the dependency on enumerators will reduce, and we will be able to add in our data on our own, and the government can check that data on its own because we will have census apps connected to our smartphone. So it is making use of technology at a very high scale, and this is all in sync with the Digital India vision that PM Modi has. Another interesting thing is self-enumeration. Self-enumeration or self-listing. So earlier what used to happen, a surveyor or an enumerator would come to our place and then they would ask for information like name, age, gender, marital status, income status, household status, things like that, and all the data will be entered manually. There was a lot of manual dependency on enumerators, and this in turn would have reduced the chances of inaccuracy in data. Now what is going to happen? Self-enumeration will be enabled, which means that on these census apps, I can just go in and add all this information on my own. I do not need an enumerator to visit me. I can add all this information on my own. A unique ID will be generated, and once this enumerator comes to my place, I can simply show him that unique ID. All my data will be visible in front of him, and then if need be, they can validate that data by asking questions. So this is somewhat like the ITR, filing ITRs. So when we file ITRs, we add in all our information on our own on the portal. The government can verify it based on the different bills that we place in there. So this is very similar to filing an ITR, where the dependency or enumerators is going to reduce, manual errors are going to reduce, and self-enumeration comes into picture. Then we will have GPS tagging, geofencing, live data quality alerts to ensure coverage and consistency. Geotagging. So when I will enter all this information on the census app, it will automatically get the geographical coordinates of my house. So it will be able to identify whether I am sitting in an urban area or a rural area, and is it a densely populated area or sparsely populated area. So all this information, all this granular information is also going to be automatically fed into the caste or into the census application that will be there on my smartphone. Geofencing will also be there. So geofencing is for enumerators. Earlier, because it was all manual, there was duplication of efforts, because these the boundaries where enumerators were supposed to go, or the households that were divided for each of these enumerators, there were times that multiple enumerators would go and visit the same household because the boundaries were not clearly identified or clearly defined, and there was confusion because it was all manual in nature. There was duplication of efforts. But with geofencing, everything will be data driven. Everything will be handled geographically. So what is going to happen? There might be some alerts that will beep once you start moving out of the geographical area assigned to you, in order to save any duplication of efforts, in order to avoid any duplication of efforts. This type of geofencing technology is also going to be very helpful. Then offline capabilities will also be there for remote regions. So areas which are not directly connected to the internet at all times, offline facility will be available to them so that they can add in their data even while offline. And once the live connection is restored, this data will be automatically synced to the cloud system. And an estimated 2.7 to 3 million enumerators, which includes teachers equipped with multiple language training, are supposed to be participating in this caste census data. So this is going to be a very big exercise, a very large exercise conducting in different phases. but it is going to have a very interesting feature, that is it will be fully digital in nature. The second important thing is that it will have caste enumeration. So as I mentioned, after independence, we used to collect data of our scheduled tribes and scheduled castes, but no data of OBCs was conducted or OBCs was stored. So with this information, with this feature, we are going to have caste enumeration for OBCs also. And what is this going to help us with? It will help us with targeted welfare policies. We will be able to identify which caste or which category needs what kinds of facilities, which one is lacking in education or in sanitation facilities, health facilities. We will have data with us, and then based on that we can make better policies, targeted welfare policies. So these are some interesting things that have been included in the census of 2027. It is going to be a two-step process, as we discussed initially, that house listing is going to happen from April to September 2026, and then individual enumeration will happen. So in house listing, we are going to collect all the materialistic things in a household, like the building materials, access to water and electricity, sanitation, fuel use, asset ownership, what is the TV, internet, vehicle status that you have in your households, number of rooms, household size, telephone details. Everything materialistic about a household will be collected in house listing. And once the house listing is completed, we will dive into population listing, where we will talk about the individuals living in that household. So we are going to collect information like name, age, sex, marital status, religion, mother tongue, education, occupation, disability, fertility for women. So the number of children a woman has, this will also be calculated or counted, and plus caste information for SC, ST, OBC and others. And this will be taken care of by self-enumeration, something that we already discussed. So first phase will be about house listing, and second phase is going to be about population listing. And the positive implication of this is going to be, number one, that our data is very, very outdated. It is going to help us with the latest data. India is now the most populous country in the world, and we are still relying on data that is decades old. It is no longer relevant in modern times. So we will now have fresh data, latest data, reliable data to make better policies. Then granular data like urban and rural growth will also be provided in this census information. It will enable redrawing political constituencies for delimitation. So what is delimitation? Delimitation is an exercise of drawing our political constituencies based on the population that lives in that area. So this is taken care of by the Delimitation Commission, and the information that comes in from the census is very, very crucial for these delimitation commissions. So once the census is completed, this data will also flow into the Delimitation Commission, which will be able to redraw the political constituencies based on population in different regions. It will empower caste-based policy making and potential recalibration of quotas for SC, ST, OBCs, as well as assessing welfare delivery. So we'll be able to make targeted policies. We'll be able to identify which caste or category is lying where. Do we need to reassess our quotas or not based on the population that we have for all these categories? And then we'll be able to make better welfare schemes. Now let us also look at the next steps. So the next steps are that from April to September, the house listing census is going to be there. And from February, main population enumeration is going to happen. And from March, in March, once we get all this information, house listing information and population enumeration information, then we will be able to consolidate all that into a proper census report. And this census report is going to help us with the delimitation of constituencies. So let us also look at what the Delimitation Commission is. It is a statutory body, which means it is set up by an act of the parliament. And what was the act? It was the Delimitation Act of 1952, which was also amended later. But the main job of this constituency, of this commission, is to redraw the boundaries of Lok Sabha and state assembly constituencies based on latest population figures from the census. So we need to get the latest population figures from the census. That is why a new commission has not been able to be constituted yet, because we do not have latest information of our census. And this ensures equitable representation as population shifts and grows. Naturally, there is a lot of immigration that happens in these regions. So the regional population always keeps changing. And right now, we do not have the correct or adequate regional population information. It is appointed by the President of India, and it works in collaboration with the Election Commission. And the decisions, they have the force of law, and they cannot be challenged in any court. This is an important point, that the decisions of the Delimitation Commission, they cannot be challenged in any court. So the last delimitation was done in 2002 using the 2001 census. Look at how old this data is. 2001 census, but the further delimitation has been frozen until after 2026. So no delimitation will have to be done by 2026. Once we have the new data come in by the census 2027, then we'll have a new delimitation commission set up. So that was all for today's video. We discussed the highlights of conducting census 2027, the role of delimitation commission, and why is conducting a new census very critical now. Let us see if you can answer this question for prelims. Which of the following statements is or are correct with reference to the upcoming census 2027 and its related constitutional development? 1. The Women's Reservation Bill mandates the conduct of a nationwide census before its implementation. 2. The Delimitation Commission is a permanent constitutional body responsible for adjusting electoral constituencies after every census. 3. The 2027 census will include a nationwide caste enumeration for the first time since 1931. 4. The delimitation of constituencies based on 2027 census will be carried out by the Election Commission of India. Select the correct statement. A. 1 and 3 only, B. 2 and 3 only, C. 1 only, and D. 1, 2 and 4 only. Please provide your answers in the comment section, and until we meet the next time, please keep studying and keep revising.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.